This is the news reading. It's still the New York Times news in Chinese version. And if you like me, please subscribe me or make a comment or make a like. Thank you very much. And today is the 23 September 2025. Actually, it is 24. And the news is about the Trump Autocrats move quickly to fill void as Trump retreats from United Nations. As President Trump's return to states American founding for the United Nations this spring, diplomats from around the world met privately at a lakeside resort in Sweden to wait painful spending costs. One proposal hinting at the potential cost of Americans' withdrawal. What if the United Nations cut funding for human rights investigations? The ambassador of China and Cuba, which have long faced scrutiny over their own rights records, were the ones pushing to limit inquiries into government sanctioned abuse like torture, war crimes, and jailing of dissidents. According to two diplomats who attended the meeting of the Human Rights Council in May in Switzerland. Over the past few months, these nations, along with others that have a history of imprisoning dissidents like Iran, Russia, and Venezuela, have repeatedly suggested scaling back human rights investigations, citing the need to save money. The two diplomats, as well as two human rights activists, said, since taking office, Mr. Trump has upended the operations of the United Nations by withdrawing from the Human Rights Council and other agencies, freezing funding for others, and ordering a sweeping review of Americans' involvement in the global body. The United States hosts the United Nations headquarters in New York City and has long built its large doors. While the White House has not yet announced the results of its review, it has clawed back $1 billion in funding for the United Nations and informed Congress of its intent to stash another $1 million, adding to a funding shortfall at the United Nations. Earlier this week, senior United Nations office proposed broad funding cuts, including to human rights programs, according to a document obtained by the Times. World leaders would be watching closely for further announcements as President Trump addressed the United Nations General Assembly at its annual gathering in New York next week. United Nations critics within and outside the Trump administration argue that the United Nations is a wasteful, ineffective bureaucracy bias against American interests, and that bodies such as the Human Rights Council do more to legitimize governments that commit abuse than improve conditions on the ground. But those who defend the United Nations as one of the few organizations that can shine a light on justice says the Trump administration retreat is embedding authoritarian nations to reshape the United Nations to their advantage. Interviews with 2,000 diplomats and officers and a review of internal and other documents reveal. Quarter, with his history of labor abuse, it offering to hold some of the office of the United Nations Workers' Rights Agents. Russia has proposed cutting speaking time for advocacy groups to save money on hearings. Eritrea has called for an end to the United Nations investigation into human rights abuse there. The countries are using every opportunity, including the opportunity presented by the liquidity crisis and at high-level meetings to try and advance their agenda, said Pierre Lynch, the executive director of International Service for Human Rights, a non-government group focused on United Nations advocacy in Giovanni. Cards are on the table, and it opens a window for opportunity for them. The State Department said in a statement that the Trump administration review seeks to ensure that the United States is more effective to promoting the safety, security, and prosperity of American nodes, and that the department would not comment on the process until it have concluded. The budget cuts being discussed by the United Nations are widely praised as a response to Mr. Trump's actions, but Farhan Hef, the United Nations deputy spokesman, said the budget overhaul was part of an ongoing effort to make the organization more agile and efficient. The Cooper, Eritrean, Russian, and Qatari missions to Geneva did not respond to requests to comment. The Chinese embassy in Washington said in a statement that it opposed attempts by certain countries to politicize human rights. China has never intended to challenge or replace the United States, the embassy said. A power vacuum and the scramble to fill it, the world once relied on American money and leadership to address global problems like pandemic, forced labor, and poverty. Now, many groups are considered new patriots like China and Qatar, governments that are seeking to remake the oversight of human rights and labor conditions. The United Nations had already been facing a fiscal crisis for years. Its office in Geneva has cut back on meeting time and interpretation surveys and even closed for weeks at a time. The United States is charged 22% of the United Nations $3.72 billion regular budget, and Washington has also provided billions annually in additional contributions to United Nations peacekeeping in and other United Nations agents' funds and programs. The White House has argued that the funding doesn't serve U.S. interests. Opponents of United Nations engagement point to China's seat on the Human Rights Council, which has criticized the United States for practices like separating migrant families. There is scant evidence of the Council improving human rights, but much evidence of governments elected to the Council use it to shield themselves from scrutiny, said Britta D. Sketchford, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington. Mr. Trump withdrew from the Rights Council and the World Health Organization earlier this year and from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, the first UN agency to undergo to review on July 22. The Trump administration warnings of international bodies has only made the United Nations case scratch worse. Some United Nations agencies in Geneva stand to lose as much as 40% of their funding. United Nations leaders asked departments in May to find budget cuts and consider relocating some positions from New York and Geneva to cheaper cities. The Geneva office proposed ending the lease earlier on the building that hosts the United Nations Human Rights Arm and the United Nations Department that provides rations to peacekeeping troops has proposed slashing their daily calories from 4,500 to 3,250 in an internal presentation obtained by the New York Times. The financial squeeze has also led to proposed relocate to the office to agents, which could expand the influence of the new countries hosting them. Qatar sent a large delegation to Geneva, offering a house pass of several United Nations groups, according to the diplomats briefly on their visit. Over the past few months, leaders at the International Labour Organization and United Nations agents have met repeatedly with Qatari diplomats. A review of record shows its Director General has reportedly said he is considering moving some staff members to Doha, despite the earlier controversy over Qatari funding of the agents and criticism of the city's treatment of migrant workers. The Labour Organization denied to comment on its relocation plans or discussions with Qatari's office. Rwanda, where the government has faced criticism for backing rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is also interested in hosting a long-term United Nations composed, according to a letter from its Prime Minister obtained by the Times. The rebels have been widely accused of human rights abuse, including unlawful executions, rape, and other war crimes. The letter was earlier reported by Neopost, a Uganda-based news site. Mr. Hank, the United Disputed Sportsman, said the organization does not typically disclose communications from member states and that any relocations will be done in a phased manner with approval from United Nations member states. The Rwanda mission to New York did not respond to a request to comment. China, which has longer showed a greater role in the United Nations, is expanding its sway in multiple bodies. In May, months after Mr. Trump's withdrawal from the WHO, China sent a vice premier to the WHO, a body, and said it would provide $500 million in funding over 5 years. The health body has been accused of letting Beijing steer its search for the origins of the pandemic instead of pushing for more thorough inquiry in the country, a charge that both the Chinese embassy and WHO denied. The new outlet could give Beijing more influence in the organization's human rights and food acts under pressures. Not at all the measures being put forth by China, Russia, and their supporters to weaken human rights protections are finding success. Their proposals to cut fundings for human rights investigations and speaking time for independent activities were ultimately not adopted at the private meetings of the Human Rights Council this spring. In July, Eritrea introduced a measure calling for an end to a united investigation into human rights abuse with its brothers. It was rejected. But public debates on the Eritrea investigation, along with funding for other Union Nations human rights activities, will be scaled back. The United States has its own record of human rights violations, and its global standing has eroded in recent years. This mission is creditably in the United Nations. Now, its retreat has left rights monitors with few resources. Soon after Mr. Trump ordered a review of the United States involvement in the United Nations in February, staff members in some Union Nation agents were told not to spend money on that the United States had already allocated, resulting in a freeze on some projects, according to messages seen by the Times. Some agency heads on Geneva was caught off guard. The combination of the United States funding freeze and cuts by other donors was a shock. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, told staff members in May, according to a transcript obtained by the Times. Unfortunately, regrettably, we will have to do that with this, he said, and this will impact the lives of millions of people. Although limited United States funding to the agency has resumed, the agency said in July that up to 11.6 million refugees could be cut. The United Nations Food Agency estimates that as many as 16.7 million people could lose food assistance. European countries have argued that they cannot fill the gap because the Trump administration has demanded that they spend more on defense, diplomats in Geneva said. Nor will China make up the difference. The Chinese outlay to WHO is far less than the United States would have paid have Mr. Trump stayed in the organization. This is irony, said Richard Goldman, the United States Nations Director at the International Crisis Group, an organization that seeks to prevent deadly conflicts. The Chinese don't need to set up in a big way to gain more influence, because the United States working out means that by definition, the Chinese are more powerful. American soft power up for grabs. Mr. Trump and his supporters sometimes describe United Nations globalists who put other countries' interests before those of the United States. In fact, the United States, which helped create the United Nations 80 years ago, known widely immense power, helping sway elections at the United Nations and both to influence policy on human rights and other areas. Now it stands to lose its influence. Andrew Brewer, a former United States ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva, said he helped defeat a Chinese candidate in the 2020 elections for the head of the United Nations organization charged with protecting intellectual property by using the State Department to ready support the agency's international rules around intellectual property, an area where the United States and China have long clashed. Washington also flags its Moscow's at the International Telecommunication Union and obscured by influential United Nations agents that sets policy for the satellite communication and internet cables. China had led the agents for 8 years and pushing 5G equipment development by Huawei, a Chinese telecommunications company. In 2022, the United States helped secure the elections of an American, Doreen Martin, who helped U.S. technology companies make inroads in emerging economies. But today, that power only goes so far. At a meeting of the agents in June, American diplomats sought to block Shanghai from hosting a 2027 conference where the International Telecommunication Union will discuss satellite regulations. People familiar with the negotiations said a win for China would have prevented security concerns for American companies hoping to join the conference. The United States offered Washington as a last-minute alternative. Influencing both was the sort of soft power move the United States once excelled at. This time, the America lost. Thanks for listening and wish you have a peace life. If you like, please subscribe me and I will reading the news. I will insist to reading this news and thank you. See you.